Whoop, whoop.
Yo. Check.
Typical way to start the show.
Yeah,
You're there.
That's our thing. I'm here. You're here.
I'm here and you're here. I've been struggling with what to call this episode because one of these band names is several words and the other band name is one word. So...
Abandoned by Belmont?
Abandoned by Belmont was one thing that came to mind. Bearmont was another thing that came to mind. Or Abandoned by Bearmont.
Yeah, I like that.
It's something along the... Listen, if you're listening to this podcast right now, you know what the episode's called because I've already titled it. But this is... You get the inside look at fleshing it out.
Belmont Bears?
That sounds like a sports team.
Bear Belmonts? I don't know.
What came first? Music or the misery? People worry about kids playing with guns or watching violent videos. Some sort of culture of violence will take them over. Nobody worries about kids listening to thousands, literally thousands of songs about heartbreak, rejection, pain, misery, and loss. Did I listen to pop music because I was miserable? Or was I miserable because I listened to pop music?
All right, it's time for another Versus. We got a couple albums that we are going to talk about. And that, realistically, we have a couple of albums. These weren't released on the same day. And that's because, they weren't released on the same day, and that's because they just weren't.
That is the best explanation ever.
But the reason we're doing this right now is because I was on holidays, all that fun stuff. So they were released 1 week after the other. And they're two fitting albums to put against each other. So we got the brand new album from Abandoned by Bears called Headstorm, and then the debut full length, the self-titled album from Belmont.
I didn't know that.
There you go.
Okay.
So we're gonna get into it. Let's start with let's go with Abandoned by Bears.
All right.
And first and foremost, another non-American band dropping an album this summer.
What are they, Australian?
No, that would be very fitting, but they are not. Let's play a little. Can you figure it out?
They're not
just
Canadian.
No, they're just as blonde-haired, cliche and stereotypically, if I can, like stereotype a band. I don't know what they look like, but this country is viewed just as blonde as Australia.
Just as blonde as Australia.
Yeah.
Okay, like I would assume like Sweden?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I
was
going to say like New Zealand's close to Australia, but not very blonde.
So they're from Sweden.
I had no idea.
Yeah, there you go. And so this is I don't know how many albums have these guys released because you were familiar. Well, let's look at full length. You were familiar with them.
Yeah, I had heard. I've heard of them before. When you suggested it, I was like, oh yeah. I listened to the album When Nothing Goes Right, Go Left. Right. That was 2014. So I had heard two songs off there, Homegrown and Bomberman vs. Mega Man.
Yeah.
They kind of lead into each other. They were like, okay. It was very like, it was a weird, like happy, poppy synth metal.
Right. Yeah. So
combo.
This is just from doing some quick research. I guess this is their second full-length album. They've had some EPs and singles in there as well. But I had actually, as far as I am aware and as far as I can tell, I don't think I'd ever heard of them.
Yeah.
Well, the name was familiar, but I don't know if it's just because it sounds like it should be a band name, Abandoned by Bears. A little interesting. No, this isn't an interesting tie. I was going to say another Swedish punk band. They have I don't know if it was their logo or if it was just the artwork for one of their records, but Millencolin featured a bear. I want to say they might be one of the most well-known, longest-running Swedish punk bands.
Is there a bear problem in Sweden?
I don't know.
I think
there is. There's a bear issue, but being abandoned by them apparently. Yeah. So let's get into this record. All right. First and foremost, what are kind of your initial thoughts on it?
A little bit different from what I remember them. There's moments where it's like, okay, this kind of sounds similar. To be honest, overall, I was a little underwhelmed.
Okay.
And I think you thought I was going to really like this album.
I don't know if I thought you were going to like it, but it's up your alley.
Yeah. So there's moments.
Music is concerned.
So there's moments in the album where when it gets really heavy, there's a couple breakdowns where I'm like, oh yeah, I kind of like this. And then there's moments where it's a little more fast-paced and melodic. I'm like, I like that. But for the most part, I found this album to be kind of just like a little bland.
Sure.
A little too much going on. It's just like, it seemed like there was a lot going on in every song, and they just kind of, it didn't really have a big impact on me.
So this is what I'll say about this record. The few times I listened to it straight through a couple of times, and it worked well because I was driving through the night, headphones on, and I'd put this on alongside Belmont. But like this record, the first few songs especially, I'd be like, oh, I'd kind of get into this groove. I was like, oh, and I liked the way things were going. And then what it does is I can kind of agree with like the blandness maybe, where it gets to a point where I'm kind of like, okay, every song starts to feel the same. It does have moments here and there. But what they do all of a sudden that kind of like works for me is I think it's the song Drowned Out, which is track 8.
Yeah. All
of a sudden they bring in, because up to this point there's been kind of like minimal screams, almost more straightforward melodic pop punk.
Yeah.
With some screams and breakdowns here and there, but it's not like the focus. It's not the forefront. And then with track 8, I believe Drowned Out, all of a sudden they bring that in, and it's a little more in your face. Yeah. And then I think it's track 9, Outrun Reality, kind of like dials it down, so it starts quiet. And then I feel like the album finishes stronger than its middle. I like to say, especially track 8, Drowned Out, and then 11, Grayscale, the last song. Grayscale especially, I like to say they start playing gutter riffs. And what I mean by that is it sounds like their guitars are down-tuned, like, so they're tuned out into the gutter. Like they've really tuned them down. Their guitars are struggling to maintain any sort of tension on the strings.
Right.
It's not quite that bad, but you can definitely tell the guitars are down-tuned. They're heavier, and there's almost, I don't know if this is the right descriptor, but there's almost a little bit of like nu metal sound in their guitar tones there, with specifically, like I said, track 8 and track 11. And I do really like it. And I think what I like is like I said, the album gets to a point where you kind of start getting a little tired.
Yeah.
And then it changes it up for the last few songs to really kind of propel you to the end of the record. And that's kind of unique to me, because usually once a record falls off, it's sort of, you might get a song, but it just sort of really falls off for you, right? Whereas this, I found that they changed direction enough and kept it interesting enough that once I got to that point, I knew I could get to the end.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I liked track 5 as well, Blurry Vision. That was a good one. Drowned Out, I noted as well. It's like, okay, I kind of like, I can get into these guys.
I do have to say this. I wonder if I can bring up the lyrics for this. Are they on Apple Music? They are. Okay. So Fervor, every time I hear it, I think Backstreet Boys.
Really?
The first 2 lines in the song are "Ignite this fire, you're all that I desire." You can't tell me that you don't think of "You are my fire, my one desire." They literally rhymed the same. Exact,
well, I'll never listen to that one the same again.
Every time it would come on, I'd be like, "Huh? Oh, I got to get
some
past
heavy
that."
Backstreet Boys influences.
Yeah, and maybe that's why
Sweden.
the next track is where all of a sudden I feel like, okay, you cleanse a little bit when it gets a little heavier and what have you. But I mean, for me, I was pleasantly surprised with this record. Again, having never heard them, and kind of like, I guess I'm kind of new and familiar with some of these terms, because I think some of them popped up when I kind of stopped listening to pop punk. But easycore.
Yeah.
And so I've never really been a big fan of easycore. And, like one of those forefront bands would be one of your favorites, A Day to Remember, right? Falling in line with that.
Debatable.
What?
Debatable.
Falling in line with easycore?
Yeah, debatable.
Okay, explain yourself.
Because A Day to Remember, listen, I put these guys as easycore.
Sure. Yeah.
And I view easycore as like really synthy, kind of cheesy, super poppy metal. I don't view Day to Remember like that at all.
This is how
they're more melodic, definitely for sure. But yeah, no, I would not.
This is how I would describe easycore, though, is it's pop punk with hardcore breakdowns. Now argue that A Day to Remember is not an easycore band.
I would say they are what you described, but I would describe easycore as way more synthy, poppy. It's on the other side of the spectrum. So our definition of easycore differs.
Maybe, I guess, but I just think you're wrong.
Yeah,
but
I would not. But
this is what I was gonna say. at least so like with A Day to Remember, Homesick is really the only album that I've thoroughly listened to. Right?
Great album.
It is a great album, but it does have issues for me, which this record doesn't get into. And we talked about that when we talked about A Day to Remember. Like, first off, the gang vocals were everywhere on A Day to Remember.
Right. So good.
And obnoxious. and I just felt like, as bland as this record can be, I didn't feel like they followed that exact same formula as much as A Day to Remember. Now, don't get me wrong. A Day to Remember, I think, writes better songs.
Yeah.
But I just didn't quite get as tired listening to this.
Are you serious?
Yeah, well, see, the thing is, A Day to Remember, on that record, they had much better moments. You know what I mean? Like, so the highs were much higher, but I also think for me, when the lows hit, they were much lower. Whereas
really?
But I think this falls in line sort of with what you were describing, and it's just how it related to me, where it was just kind of across the board, sort of bland. Like, it never got offensive to me, with this album. And then it had some saving grace at the end. I think it starts fine. The first track or two are fine, and then it kind of really muddies and gets eh. And then the last couple tracks, I think, are the strongest, which push me through, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, just like, as a whole, like, A Day to Remember is definitely a better band, but I just felt like this album was maybe more consistent for me, which doesn't necessarily make it better.
No, yeah, and this album, I kind of, like, at the end of it, I'm kind of like, meh. You know, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
So I just looked, this is weird. I just looked up easycore on Wikipedia.
Okay, what's the definition?
Well, the problem is, for whatever reason, it appears to be, what I'm looking at appears to be in French. And I don't know why it's in French.
Who's that French easycore band? Oh, and this is going to bother me now. They're a prime example of this. I can't think of them.
I couldn't tell you. I'm currently trying to change it from French on here so that I can maybe read what it's supposed to say. Did I ruin it?
You're not fluent?
Easycore, less commonly known as popcore, dudecore, softcore, happy hardcore, and easy, is a subgenre of melodic hardcore that mixes elements of pop punk and different forms of hardcore punk, particularly metalcore and post-hardcore, characterized by its use of melodies commonly found in pop punk fused with breakdowns found in post-hardcore and hardcore punk. Eat it.
I don't.
Eat it.
No. I don't.
A Day to Remember, 100% easycore band.
No, okay. I know there's going to be listeners who side with me on this. I definitely would not describe A Day to Remember as
the easycore sound later emerged in the mid to late 2000s and early 2010s by bands such as Chunk, No Captain Chunk,
That's
which
it.
Which
That's
is hilarious. I'm wearing a Chunk T-shirt right now from the Goonies.
Okay, that's the French. That's the French band I was talking about.
But let's not stop there. So, by bands such as Chunk, No Captain Chunk, A Day to Remember,
No.
and 4 Years Strong.
No.
Oh, what does it say here? This is funny. I like this. Easycore has since seen a bit of decrease in popularity.
Yeah.
Now, chalk that one up for me. That's a point for me.
Oh man, I just don't agree with anyone right now, man, on the internet.
It's fair to say.
I will put Chunk Captain No Chunk or whatever they're called.
Chunk? Yeah. No Captain Chunk.
Yeah, whatever it is. For sure. That's the band I was thinking.
So have you
They're
seen The
easycore.
Goonies?
I've not seen The Goonies.
Oh my.
I've not.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know what might be an interesting thing to do? Because I've brought up a couple movies now on the show, and you're like, I haven't seen them. We're going to start doing movie reviews.
Okay.
But we're going to do like verses. And so up first, probably the two heaviest hitters of all of those kind of that era of movies.
Sure.
We're going to pit, which Goonies is a little bit older, but the Goonies against The Sandlot.
I've seen a bit of The Sandlot.
Okay, so you're going to watch both those movies.
All right.
We'll come back to this. No.
Okay.
But having that debate settled, that, A Day to Remember for sure is easycore.
No.
Do you want to hear more about easycore? The genre's roots come from early 2000s pop punk with groups such as Newfound Glory and some.
I want to know what our listeners think, because I think most people. Listen, I don't disagree on any of the other bands. I just don't think A Day to Remember.
Here's the thing.
easycore.
Okay. You're looking at the term easycore, dudecore, whatever, as something as like a derogatory term, right?
A little bit.
Much like fans of emo may look at that term as a derogatory term, right?
Yes.
But you can't argue that A Day to Remember fits the description of easycore.
They fit that description.
Maybe, yeah, which is it's Wikipedia. That is the be all end all of description. No, but here's the thing. Let's put it this way: A Day to Remember is an easycore band, but it might be safe to argue that they've ascended above the genre. If that makes sense.
Yeah, they definitely have changed. I will.
I'm not even necessarily saying that. I just mean with like quality of song and influence and all of that kind of stuff, that maybe it's safe to say that A Day to Remember has ascended above all of the peers with their body of work.
Sure.
And
I'll agree with that.
And you know what? Maybe they have, even for fans, like people who aren't fans of easycore, maybe still can fall in line with some A Day to Remember. I don't know. I'm just trying to.
I'll say they're on they're on the rim of it. That's as close as I'll come.
You say what you want.
Yeah,
they are an easycore band. So we have 11 tracks on this album. What do you give Headstorm by Abandoned by Bears out of 11?
5.
Wow, you failed it.
Yeah, it's okay.
I can't fail it.
It's okay
because I honestly enjoyed listening to it. It is. You're right. It is okay, but I'm going to give it 6.5.
Okay.
I don't know. Like I could take it or leave it.
Yeah.
It definitely, when it comes on, I'm not offended by it.
Yeah.
By any means, be like, turn this off.
I don't think I'll be returning to it very often.
Okay, but time now to move on to another band that has been labeled easycore.
What?
That one surprised me. I was like, really?
But this is like.
But no, here when I kind of agree in a sense, and it's also something that makes me like them quite a bit. But anyways, Belmont, their self-titled debut full length on possibly the best name for a record label out there, Mutant League Records. Yeah, so I had, and this is really where I learned the definition of easycore, because I kind of I'd heard it but never really thought what is this? But someone had commented on a YouTube video about how, they're the best easycore band out there. And then someone commented like, nothing about this is easy. And they're like, I don't think you know what easycore is. And then described it as being pop punk with hardcore breakdowns, right? And they do have some chug breakdown. They're not to the same extent as even Abandoned by Bears, where it literally feels like a dun dun, right?
Yeah.
But halftime breakdown sort of stuff does exist on this record. I don't know if I'm fully ready to call it easycore.
No, I wouldn't. But
I've come to learn that you definitely hate the term easycore.
Easycore, yeah.
You're
unless
by it.
I've always pictured Chunk, No Captain Chunk as that's the perfect example of an easycore band.
Yeah.
And I don't really like those types of bands. So I don't. I don't see it.
I love it. Okay, so let's get into this. What did you think of this record?
To be honest, kind of the same. It has its moments.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is produced better. It just sounded better to me.
Sure.
Definitely they have an original sound, and I had an easier time listening to this album all the way through, and I didn't get as tired from it. Hollowed Out's the best song on it for sure.
Probably up there, yeah.
Yeah, and I liked it. It wasn't, sometimes it did feel a little bland because the melody sometimes kind of it's just middle of the road sometimes.
So this is my issue. I really liked their EP that they released.
You showed me a song off of, I guess, that EP.
I think it's called Overstepping.
And I really liked that,
and
I didn't really find that on here.
Yeah, so this record was interesting to me because of that EP. I listened to it a whole bunch. I was really looking forward to this album, and in the end, I like it. It's fine. It's short. It's 27 minutes, only 10 tracks, but I did have issues with it, and here are my issues with it. One, a lot of the songs kind of follow a similar. That's not a word. Similar formula. Simula. I'm trying to combine words.
Yeah.
They got a simula. They follow a similar formula, and I just find that eventually the songs kind of bleed together. Some of that, yes, the songs do actually bleed together in the production, and that's another one of my problems I have, is because some of them don't feel like they should.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
Going from Write Me Off to Pushing Daisies, is this really weird transition. And this thing, I'm like, how does Write Me Off actually end? Because the beginning of Pushing Daisies sounds like it potentially could have been going into this like very like just like a 180 degree turn into a bridge, and then it goes into another song. And I'm like, but it doesn't really flow that well in my mind.
Yeah, I agree.
Pushing Daisies is a fine song, but yeah, it's just this really kind of weird intro. But then going from the song Albert into Hollowed Out, they just bleed directly into each other, which I thought was interesting too, because I'm like, some of these that are bleeding into are like singles. And so I'm like, it's just really like Albert into Hollowed Out is kind of a really neat feeling to me, because it like finishes this song, or at least feels like it finishes this song, and then boom, goes right into the song. I'm like, oh yeah, I've known this song for a little bit now because it was that lead single, right? So it's kind of this neat vibe, but at the same point, it concerns me and makes me go, does the band Belmont know how to end things? Because the final track, the final track, BMC, which I want to know, we're going to discuss in a few moments what BMC stands for. But it just ends, and I'm like, oh, that's the end of the record. All right. And I guess it does a good thing in the sense that I'm like, I'm not expecting it to be the end, so I'm not ready for the end. So I maybe go listen to it again. But it's like this just finished where I'm like, oh, all right.
It's a little abrupt. Yeah.
It's a little abrupt, and it doesn't do anything. And I'm like, here's another problem I have with this record. Having said all this, I do like the album. But what I really liked about them on that EP was that they were this techie pop punk band.
Yes.
Right? Their drummer is still out of this world good.
That one song was insane.
Yeah, I feel like he doesn't showcase it as much, and I don't know if it was a conscious decision. They seem to focus a lot more on this album on, instead of like these, kind of more technical riffs and technical drumming, they really kind of focused a little more on melody, which is fine, but it kind of removed that thing from them that I really was attracted to. Like going, oh, this is different what they're doing with this. And now they do still do that a little bit. There is some interesting kind of guitar pieces. Sometimes it feels a little bit like they're relying too much. Like I think it's on Pushing Daisies. There's like this guitar sound that continues through the song. And I'm like, you're relying too much on that to be like the focal point of the song. And it literally, and I'm pretty sure this is all he's doing, is he's flipping his toggle switch. So he's like turning his signal on the guitar off and on. So it's like tick, 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 like as he goes through the song. And I'm like, you're relying on that too much to be the focal point of the song, and it kind of detracts a little bit from the song. But I
would agree. I wish there was more of that on this album, because when you showed me that, I was like, I think I'm gonna really like these guys. Yeah,
and they, it's fine. The record's fast. It moves along. It's got some good tunes. It's got some good tunes. It's got an interesting interlude, which might, unfortunately for them, it might be like the best sort of song on, like as far as singing along is concerned, that interlude, which is funny because it's not even them.
Who's Shinigami?
I think he's like one of those like emo rap artists. I haven't looked him up.
I don't know.
But like probably falls in line with like a Nothing Nowhere sort of deal. I was intrigued and I was thinking about looking him up, but I didn't do it. I didn't get around to it. But so this record kind of, what are you showing me?
Yeah, he's got like dragons on his albums.
Yeah, I guess so. What is it?
It's the same guy.
I wonder what it lists him as. It just says alternative. What does this one say? Alternative? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's us figuring things out as we go. But I mean, yeah, the record as a whole was fine. It wasn't quite what I was expecting it to be, which was a little bit of a letdown, because this was one record that I was looking forward to for quite some time.
You were excited for this.
And it's still okay. Like realistically, the EP in my mind is better. And maybe they could have made a really solid EP if they made it an EP versus a full length. There are some, it feels like, unfinished thoughts on this album. But it's funny watching a lot of, and I don't know what the reactions are now, but like leading up to the release of this album, I did see people on different like Facebook or Reddit pages being like, can we just already say this is going to be album of the year? And I'm curious to know what their thoughts are now, having heard it.
Yeah, never claim that before the album comes out.
Right. But I mean, knowing what they had done on their EP, and then the first couple singles were pretty good. You know, it was just one of these things where it came out and it was sort of like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
You know, like
it's not bad. It's just
not bad.
Great.
And I mean, I think it definitely benefits from being less than a half hour long.
Yep.
You know, but at the same point, like I said, like I would have liked something to happen at the end of the album versus just it's like, oh, it's done, and oh, it's done.
Yeah, it's over.
Yeah. So
I noticed that too. It was just like suddenly there was no music playing in my car, and I was like,
what happened? Yeah.
Like I didn't even know it ended.
Yeah. So what are you going to give this record out of 10?
6.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a 6.5.
Okay.
Like it's fine. I mean 6.5 maybe leading to 7, but yeah, it's 6 3/4 isn't really a grade. So 6.5 out of 10. So I mean it is the album that we picked out of the two.
It wins.
Yeah, I was expecting more out of it, but it is what it is. So I mean that's that, and you can't change my mind.
Yeah.
Maybe my mind will change the more I listen to it. It could be a grower.
And nobody can change my mind about easycore. So
A day to remember, Kings of Easycore.
somebody tell me what it really means.
I just told you.
No, I'm all confused. I'm going to be thinking about this all day now.
I literally just told you. You just need
My world is upside down.
You just need to accept the fact that
I can't.
A Day to Remember is an Easycore band.
I don't like that.
What if I said they were a dude-core band?
This is the first time I've heard dude-core, and I
feel like I've
that.
heard the term dude-core before.
Dude-core.
I don't know if I realized they were supposed to be the same thing.
Oh, man. That's funny.
I'm surprised bro-core isn't a thing.
Yeah, bro-core.
Bro. But anyways, that is going to do it for another episode. We never introduced ourselves. This has been Music to My Peers. I have and will continue to be David.
And I'm Jordan.
You can look us up on Facebook. We are also now on YouTube. When I say now on YouTube, here's the thing, is right now it's just audio episodes. We've talked about the idea of whether or not you want to see our ugly faces, but that may be a thing. But if you are listening on YouTube, if you listen on, say, like Apple Podcasts or Castbox or Google Podcasts, any of those places, you will actually have music with the episode. YouTube, we just decided not to. I've tried in the past.
I don't like us when we do that.
Well, yeah, I've tried in the past, and then sometimes it's like different labels or whatever will block it, and then I got to redo the video, so I just don't upload it with music anymore, even though sometimes it was fine. So if you want the full podcast experience, look us up in your favorite podcasting places. You can also find us at musicpeers.blogspot.com. Sometimes I write a bit of a review outside of the episode. And also, of course, Instagram at David to my peers, and one day there shall be, I promise, at Jordan to my peers.
We'll get there.
I may start it up myself.
I'm gonna make the handle A Day to Remember is not Easycore. Add A Day to Remember is not Easycore.
A Day to Remember is not Easycore. That is gonna do it for another episode of Music to My Peers. And I'm gonna end with this: A Day to Remember is Easycore.